Do you ever feel overwhelmed by the chaos of life, wishing for a way to turn your lemons into lemonade? If you've ever wanted to cut through the noise and find clarity in today's turbulent world, then you're in just the right place. Today's guest, Greer McVay, promises to share some transformative insights and strategies that blend humor, hard truths, and over 20 years of diverse experience. She'll take us on a journey through her work from her book, Sucker Moms, to her powerful podcast offering wisdom that'll help you thrive. We'll also take a look at how she helps audiences and clients navigate blurred lines of modern media. Don't go away. We'll be right back with Writer's Corner live show.
Imagine a world where the lines of reality blur with the fantastical. Embark on journeys from humble beginnings to the pinnacles of literary greatness. On the Writer's Corner, we delve into the lives of unique wordsmiths, known for their compelling storytelling. They are artisans who craft fantastical realms, etched in our memory long after the final page is turned. Every tale begins with a single word, a single idea. Authors create sensations that keep you on the edge of your seat. Witness how they transform setbacks into stepping stones. Use refusals to spark growth and turn rejections into catalysts for new inspiration. Witness the diversity in writing as it gives birth to a vast array of genres, from drama to mystery to children's stories, fantasy, and reality. Join us as we uncover sources of inspiration and the magic that defines the author's craft. Find out how authors breathe life into their characters and meticulously craft narratives and plots that captivate readers. Get a sneak peek into upcoming works and join us as we celebrate literary greatness, only on the Writer's Corner. We don't just celebrate best-selling Amazon and New York Times authors, but also indie authors. Join us on the journey from the birth of a tale to the creation of a masterpiece, only on the Writer's Corner live show. Stay tuned.
If you have just joined us, then welcome to the Writer's Corner live show. And if you're not yet following us on social media, please do, because that way you'll get notified the next time we go live. If you haven't met me yet, I'm Bridgetti Lim Banda from Cape Town in South Africa. And in today's show, Mary and I talk to Greer McVay. Our live stream is made possible by Creative Edge, StreamYard, and BeLive Media. But before we invite Greer to come and join us, I want to say hello to my friend and co-host, Mary Elizabeth Jackson. And if you haven't yet met Mary, Mary is a multiple #1 Amazon best-selling author herself. She's a certified special needs and disability advocate dedicated to empowering underrepresented voices through her writing and her advocacy. She's also a speaker, educator, ghostwriter, and songwriter. Mary, how are you today?
I'm very well, and excited to be here today with you. And I'm an author. She's first-time one for us, isn't she?
Yes, she is. And, you know, we've interviewed over 300 authors, and I'm very excited to talk to Greer because a speaker, a podcaster with thousands of followers across social media. Greer is the author of Sucker Moms, which we will focus on today. And
Not
also
soccer moms, right? Sucker moms.
Sucker Moms, not soccer moms, Sucker Moms.
Right.
And she's a contributor to the international #1 best-selling The Book I Read, Stories of Transformation. She hosts multiple podcasts, including Living the Grape Life, the Capital G podcast, and is co-host of Life, Lemons, and Lemon Drops. Ooh, I like that.
I do too.
She's got over 20 years experience in industries like oil and gas, healthcare, and government. And she brings a unique style of communication that blends humor, anecdotes, and hard truths. And we really, really need to talk to her.
I know, right? I feel like we could laugh for hours about parenting. The three of us could just snicker, couldn't we?
We absolutely could. So there's no one else better to share her story but Greer herself. So let's give her a warm welcome and ask her to join us on screen, shall we?
Yes. Hi, how are you?
Good morning, ladies. I love that introduction.
I know, don't you feel
That's
so
amazing.
You just feel so special, don't you? Yes, we're so excited to have you, and we're going to dive right in because there's so much to talk to you about. I just really feel like the three of us could get a giggle going on about parenting and like all the things we've experienced and all the "are you flipping kidding me" experiences, and like how do we handle that, because we don't get a book, right? There's no one who gives us a book. I always say this, and it says page 56 on July 5th, blah blah, you're going to hit that, you're going to have this happen, your kid's going to say this, and this is how you should respond. Wouldn't that be nice?
It would be nice if we knew, if we just had not only an instruction manual, sort of, how they, there was the book, What to Expect When You're Expecting.
Yeah.
I don't know that we have what to expect when your child is 13 or talks back,
because they all have different things. So it's like, I think you could do a guideline, but then it just like veer off because you've got, kids just don't fit the mold. They've got their own drum they're beating too. But we want to jump right in because your work often blends humor with hard truths, which Bridgetti and I are all about that, right? Because like I said, you either laugh or die in life. So can you share a moment in your life when humor played a crucial role in navigating a difficult situation? And sometimes I think humor slips out in situations and it really shouldn't, but it's like a reaction, right?
It is. And as they say, laughter is the best medicine, right? So sometimes you find yourself in odd situations where you just, the path forward isn't all that clear. And the best that you can do, or I believe the best you can do, is just one day at a time. Just move forward the best you can and hope for the best. And as they say, don't sweat the small stuff. And it's all small stuff. So in other words, don't sweat anything. And I've gone through a whole series. I mean, I'm working on a book now, sort of my memoir, which feels a little odd to me because who am I to write about my life? But I've been told if only one person benefits from it, from your story, then it will have been worth it. So I'm working on that. But a few years back, when my son was a little guy, maybe 3 or maybe he was maybe 4 or 5, I lost my job, and I'm a single mom. And I think one of the hardest things I've ever had to do was navigate trying to raise a child, maintain a household, pay the mortgage, and do all the things, and then not have a job. Fortunately, when I lost my job, I had, a fair amount of savings and resources. So it wasn't impossible to do initially, but it got progressively worse as I looked for a job. But part of what I did was, again, each day, just sort of laugh at it, just look at the humor in it. And that's when I first started writing Sucker Moms. I wasn't working, but I do communications for a living. And I thought, well, if I can write for someone else, or if I can communicate professionally, then, then I can write a book. If I could write for big oil and gas company, and I worked for a couple of big, Fortune 5 companies, as well as some nonprofits, and subsequently I've worked in government. So I've sort of run the gamut. But why can't I consult? Why can't I write? Why can't I do whatever for myself? And ultimately, what matters is who's paying, who's going to pay the bills at the end of the day. So I was sort of in a race against the clock. Which comes first, a full-time job, or, writing a book and selling something or getting clients? And, but again, as I started to write Sucker Moms, I realized part of my challenge was that I didn't have, maybe the discipline that I needed while I wasn't working and didn't have new income. I was spending money like I always had. So I was buying stuff for my son because those were the things that he needed. And at some point I realized that I was a sucker for like falling for the marketing and doing some of the things that I was doing that supposedly were for his developmental improvement, but they were to my financial detriment. And I just started looking at the humor in that and writing about that. But it was not taking that whole circumstance so seriously that enabled me to get through that challenging time, ultimately landing a job and eventually getting that book written and published.
Wow, that was absolutely amazing. And I'm so glad that you decided to put you first and get that book written. I don't think anyone else has actually put it the way that you put when you said that oftentimes we write for our companies, we write copious amounts of documentation, etc., but we don't set aside time for ourselves, investing in ourselves. And writing your book is investing in yourself. So well done on getting that done. Now, Sucker Moms, and again, it's not Soccer Moms, it's Sucker Moms, offers a unique perspective on the pressures of modern parenting. Now, I know that you touched a little bit on this, but what inspired you to want to write this book, and how do you hope it will resonate with other parents?
I initially wrote one day I was sitting at home, my son was not there, and I heard some noise coming out of his bedroom, which obviously startled me. But I went in, which sounds like maybe the beginning of a horror story, but I went into his room to see what the noise was, and it was one of his toys that had a microchip. It was some sort of a robot or something like that. And it was effectively playing by itself. And that was a wake-up call for me. That moment where I thought his toys will play with or without him. And that was before, where we are right now with AI. But, the technology's obviously been coming for decades. So anyway, I realized that toys that can play by them with or without my son, right, are probably not the healthiest. And part of what I would want for my child, and I assume other people as well would want for their children, but part of what I'm looking for was the development, right? The hand-eye coordination, the motor skills, the imaginative play, all those kinds of things that in an early childhood development sense, or the experts say that's what's important. And having toys or computers and games that will essentially rob your child of that are probably not the healthiest. That doesn't mean there's no place for them, but those are probably the things that are not going to help your child develop those skills within themselves. So I made a commitment to not providing him any more of those toys and games. And I realized it was almost like I had to go cold turkey, but I realized how addicted to the marketing I am. And I do marketing communications for a living, but I realized how susceptible I am to everything that will come along. It's like, oh, this will help their neurological skills, and this will help. But when you get the kid the toy, you bring the box and they open the box and then they play with they throw the toy aside, they play with the box, right? Or they play with a spoon with the pots and the pans. And those are the things actually that help the kids. So I decided that I was going to stop buying some of those things and spend a little more time and attention. One, just giving him time and attention and getting down on the floor and playing with him and doing some of the things, but making more fun of flashcards or other card games and things that maybe required him to count or add or match things or whatever. And I found that in time, and it wasn't a long time, but in time, he actually really learned to not only appreciate those games and toys, but he really started to learn how to entertain himself a little better, a little more than just being entertained by the things that I would buy him that ultimately weren't doing him the greatest good. I will say that when I first wrote my book, you ask sort of what I want people to get out of it. It really is just my experience, right? I have done the best that I could with what I had. And I had a lot, but I just did the best I could with what I had. And when I first wrote my book, I had a book signing event. And I was at this event and a man came, people are coming and they're buying the book and they're excited to be supportive. And this one man came up to me and he sort of chastised me and said, "What is your expertise that warrants you writing a book about parenting?" So essentially how I took it was, who are you? Are you some sort of child development expert? And I just said, well, my expertise is that I'm a mom and I'm doing the job. And, I don't have the formal knowledge, but I'm doing the job. And I think I can speak to it as well as most experts, but I absolutely can speak to my own experience better than anyone. And at the end of the day, that is what Sucker Moms is about. It's about my experience. And I hope that other people have similar experiences. And just talking to the two of you briefly, I get the feeling that you do. So I just want people to just maybe give themselves a little bit of a break, show themselves some grace, know they're doing the best they can. Yes, you can improve, you can change, you can stop on a dime and do things differently. But at the end of the day, as long as your children's best interest is, at the forefront, that's really all you can do.
You have touched on so many things that are very important. And there's nothing better than being in the trenches of parenting to know what's happening.
Yeah.
Because you don't learn those kind of things in a book. Like we talked about, there is no book to tell us at 13 or 14 or 10 or 11 or 5, this is how your child's going to act. And this is what you need to do about it. So we're in warfare, right? I have friends, we talk about PTSD parenting that goes on for so many of us, right? But nobody talks about these things. So, and yes, we do the best that we can with what we have, and none of us are perfect. So we just hope our children can go out into the world and be, amazing and empowered in their own right. And I think that makes the mom happy, right?
Yeah, that makes the mom very happy to see sort of the fruits of your labor, so to speak.
They learned one thing from me. I've said it a million times, but they learned one thing, right? So you have talked about, you have lots of different experiences and lots of different things that have shaped who you are in the different professions that you've had, along with parenting. Parenting is a profession. And, how has your approach to communication evolved, especially in today's fast-paced media landscape, like you talked about AI, because that is the unknown, sort of like a black hole out in space, right?
Over the years, and without dating myself, I come from a time when we had mimeograph machines, right? So, but over the years, communication strategies, or I won't even say strategies, but the tools that we use have changed. But what we're communicating hasn't really changed, right? So now things are much faster, and that's good and bad, right? One of the great things is that you can get information out there. You can find information. I often say to my child or anyone younger than me, I wish I had Google when I was when I was growing up, right? We had Encyclopedia Britannica, 26 volumes, or, we just didn't have this information at our fingertips. And I cannot imagine not passing a class or struggling. I just can't even imagine it with all the information that's just right there waiting for you. And with AI, when you can just say, hey, write me a term paper. Not that I would suggest that to anyone. But the downside of that is a lot of times in our haste to get the information out, to be the first, to be the breaking news, we get information wrong. We forward things, texts and news stories and things that are not accurate, that we haven't properly vetted. So, it has its downsides. The things that I have written are all nonfiction or fact-based. And I don't, maybe someday I'll try my hand at fiction writing. But when you're doing things that are fact-based, it's important to get the facts right. And that's how you maintain your credibility with your audience. And if you just put any old thing out there, that's, I would imagine you'd lose I would not read somebody's material if I just found that it was always inaccurate. So one of the things that I think is important is that you do your fact checking, but then that takes time. And sometimes your time is also taken by other priorities, which then becomes a problem. As I do like my blogging and my podcasting, I also have a day job. And then I have a child now who's an adult. He recently graduated from college, but moved back home. So I'm still mothering. I'm still actively mothering. As much as he thinks he's grown and doesn't need me, he is still in my house and, needs my support. So when you're juggling all the things, but you've got time constraints, but you've got deadlines, and you've got, it just really becomes challenging. So one of the things that I've had to work on is really being, one, just very realistic about what I can and cannot do and showing myself that grace, but being disciplined, and I'm not as good as I should be, but being disciplined about what I write, what I do, and when I do it. And I think one of my personal biggest challenges, or opportunities, I should say, is that as a writer, and having written professionally for so many years, effectively as a ghostwriter, right? I'm writing the message from the president or the CEO or the executive director, or, I'm prepared, or speeches. if we're doing a conference, I'm writing multiple people's speeches or talking points so that it all weaves together. But for years, I wasn't able to write what I wanted to write. And that is one of the biggest differences for me now, is that I get to write what I want to write, but I still have to respect that I do have a day job, that I do have an employer. So I don't always get to write when I want to write or when the inspiration hits. I don't always get to write what I want. I mean, I do get to write what I want or my perspective, but I do have to be careful that I'm not saying or doing something that would offend an employer until such time that I can afford all of my time.
Wow, there's just so much sense in what you said.
Those hard truths, I try.
They are hard truths, and we're almost out of time, but I want to ask you your podcast. I love the name, Life, Lemons and Lemon Drops. It's very insightful and very engaging. And I always say, sometimes life doesn't throw you lemons, it throws you the whole lemon tree, roots and all.
Life absolutely does.
What's been the most rewarding aspect of that show for you?
Well, two things. One, my co-host is my sister, Whitney. So working with her and seeing her through a different lens has been very rewarding. And two, the episodes that we've done where we've interviewed people, I have just found very fulfilling. The things that I'm learning along the way. So, life gives you lemon, you make lemonade, or in our case, let's make lemon drops, right? So how do you turn bad situations into positive outcomes? And so much of what I see online is just all the negative. And we look at the negative, but we try to come out on the other side with the positive. And a little over a year ago, I was diagnosed with cancer. And through my cancer journey, we sort of taken a bit of a hiatus, but we had interviewed other people who had had cancer, who had gone through divorce, who had dealt with death, who had dealt with suicide in their families, a variety of subjects. And they all came out, on the other side, so to speak. Not that they're not still in pain or mourning or saddened by the challenges, but they learn from those challenges and they learn how to move forward. And when I had my own cancer diagnosis, I actually went back and listened to a couple of those episodes where we interviewed people who had been through that experience, and it helped me decide how I was going to tackle my own treatment, my own diagnosis and treatment. And as I went through chemo, I went through it from a position I felt of power. I felt empowered to take it on, deal with it, move forward, and not, I don't want to say wallow, but not be overcome with the enormity of what I was dealing with. And I just think hearing people's stories, knowing that other people are going through what you've been through or what you are going through is helpful for everyone, because a lot of times we do feel alone, and we are not alone. And there is certainly a sisterhood out there that I've tapped into. There is a cancer survivor network out there that I have tapped into. There are single moms out there that I've tapped into. There are moms and dads, just other parents going through. So none of the experiences that I've had have been unique to me. It's just the way that I have dealt with them or managed them that is unique to me, just based on my own personality and pain tolerance threshold, and and again, my ability to use humor and look at things in the most positive way I can.
Greer, unfortunately, we're out of time. We have got to have you back on the show.
I would love to come back. Thank you. Always have lots to talk about. Next time we'll talk about living the grape life and my wine journey.
Yes. All right. So nice to have you. Thank you so much. We want to say thank you to our audience and everybody who's left us comments. Thank you so much. We're grateful.
Thank you so much for having me.
And for those of you watching, don't forget to check out Greer McVay's book, Sucker Moms, and tune into her podcasts for more of her wisdom and wit. Thanks very much for joining us on the Writers' Corner live show, and we'll see you back next week, same time, same place. Thank you for joining us on the Writer's Corner live show. 30 minutes of insightful author conversations with some of the biggest names in the industry, including award-winning authors and international indie sensations. Join us on the next episode of the Writer's Corner live show.